Hey, what's up, Facebook Live? We're about to record another episode of the Business Rising podcast. As you can see, we have the lovely Hannah Bauer, who's going to be hosting us.
I pointed to the microphone. I thought you were going to talk about the setup.
No, not talking about the setup, just talking about...
That's me.
About you. Hannah apparently wants to talk about the setup. We are aimed at a different direction. We have a new microphone. We have a new setup for the phone. Hopefully this helps with all of our internet issues off of the laptop last time. But today we're going to be talking about processes and whether or not they are helpful or harmful to your business. So I'm going to go sit down and listen in. Shoot us some comments, thoughts. Give us the big old thumbs up or maybe one of those cute hearts. And we will answer your questions at the end of the recording. Talk to you soon. I just saddled up like this was a horse.
I hate going back and watching these live videos because I always find myself just sitting there like blinking for the first half. That's cool. Anyway.
I was just gonna do this the whole time.
Okay.
Wow, Hannah, that's a great question. Wow.
Wow.
Shout out to Melissa.
Okay. Are we ready for me to count this in?
I think so.
Okay. And 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, this is Hannah Bauer from the Phoenix 21 Creative Agency, and you're listening to the Business Rising podcast. I'm sitting here with the founder, Kenny Lang.
What is up, Hannah?
That is the question of the day. What is up? We have been all over the place. Well, okay, let me clarify. Kenny has been all over the place today.
A little bit.
Yeah, just forgetting things here and there, brain scattered.
Yeah, it's the fireworks from the 4th of July just really...
Got too much of that smoke in your
It
head.
was the smoke. I blame... It's Black Cat and their fireworks that just produce... please don't sue us. We're just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You're great.
Yeah. Like,
You're great.
I don't have any lawyers. You have a lot. Leave me alone.
Shut up. No, yeah. Well, on the contrary, I've been really productive today. I have felt really good about today. Maybe it's because we had yesterday off, so I'm just like replenished. I'm ready to go. It's a Wednesday today. I'm just like, we're already halfway done with the week, and I'm just cranking through stuff.
Well, that is fantastic. Yeah, I think breaks tend to mess with me more. It was that way in college, so I would have a really good rhythm, routine down, and was just crushing stuff like classes, workout, social. Like I was just boom, boom, boom. And then like spring break or Thanksgiving break would hit, and it would be like just screech to a halt. And when I came back, I was never the same. I was like, How do you add? I'm not sure what writing is like. Did I work out before? Like, why is this so hard? And that's why, like, I feel like I get more productive the more I do instead of, just the consistency is a powerful thing for me.
Routine, you say?
Yes, routine, I say.
You know what goes along with routines?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Processes. Dun, dun, dun. And now we interject what we're talking about today. And this time, it actually seems to correlate a little bit better.
It was better
than some of our previous ones where we've just tried to slot in the topic.
Yeah, Hannah, queen of the transitions. Today was better. You really are on your game. I mean, let's not bring up the fact that I pretty much just like walked you up to it, but that notwithstanding...
I would have got it anyway.
Okay.
Leave me alone. All right. So, as I said, we are talking about processes. Yes. And if you want to get technical, we are talking about different processes within your business, and are they helping or hurting you? So let's just jump right in. Kenny, why are we talking about processes? Where does this come from?
Well, when you said, where does this come from, I started thinking about, and where does it go? Where does it come from?
Cotton Eye Joe.
Yeah. So, queen of the processes, king of the random comments. But The reason we're talking about it today is mostly because I've realized its importance in our business, as this is as we're recording. Obviously, this will be released and then listened to decades from now for all of its wisdom and importance in the history of our nation. No, it's something that I've been paying attention to a lot more, and we are starting, as of this recording, the first week of year 3 for the business, and I really feel like we're making an important leap from survive to thrive. You don't necessarily feel like you're on the brink of going out of business, or you're one wrong decision away from, crashing and being homeless. Certainly there's a value to that kind of pressure, and I think it's necessary early on. And I think there's still going to be days ahead where having that sort of urgency about our work is important and is going to be important. But in that switch from survive to thrive, I've really sensed, been told, and seen a bunch of content, whether podcasts or articles, crop up around the idea of processes. So I've started digging in and really started going through what areas of our business need processes. I mean, we had that conversation the other day. Once I started in on one area, which was just on our sales process, something simple. And so the reason we're talking about it is because it's on the top of my mind, but also because I believe it's of vital importance to anyone out there, whether you're listening to this and you're a freelancer, if you're thinking about starting a business, if you're just in business, if you're in leadership in a business, or if you own a business. There's pretty much not a scenario in which implementing processes strategically isn't a good thing, but like any good thing done to certain extremes can be hurtful or damaging.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about what a process is then, because you just commented and said if it's strategic, then it's done well. So kind of clarify what a strategic process looks like, and what would be an example of a process that's just set up and doesn't actually have any benefit.
Gotcha. So I think processes are always typically, a lot of times they're implemented with a good intention, a right heart. And I don't think anybody's ever set out to make their business overly processed. Certainly some processes are added. I don't think the vast majority of processes are added because of some sort of failure or frustration. They're not normally like things are humming along and people say, you know what, we need another guideline, another rule, another thing, for another hoop for us to jump through.
Right.
Typically they're a response to a negative emotion, or that just comes internally, or you got griped out by a client or a boss or somebody else, and you did it as a reaction. And I think either is fine. So a process really is just a set of rules and guidelines for you to follow, especially something you want to do it with something that tends to be repeatable. In our case, it was a sales process. So there's going to be some minor variations. Like if somebody wants, because if you didn't know and you're listening to this, we're a web design and inbound marketing agency. We can, if we're talking about a website, there may be some slightly different things we go through. If we're talking about inbound marketing, then that's going to have a few things that are unique to that sales process, but they're minimal, to be quite honest with you. So in creating a process, we went as high level as we could and then made it very simple. We have a start and then we have 2 outcomes at the end. Either we won the business or we lost it. In the middle, we have 3 steps that are all focused on the client or prospect's actions. So it's very buyer, customer, client focused, not necessarily focused on us. But that's getting more technical into the sales process. But any process should have this high level view of something, of the pieces of doing something that are that are repeatable, and that, especially if you would like it done a certain way. I mean, McDonald's is like the poster child for this. That's how, Ray Kroc, who jumped into with the McDonald's brothers and grew the business. That's the way that he grew it. Is he took one store, one restaurant, and systematized everything. That became his prototype store, and then he went and implemented it everywhere else. And because it was, we do the fries this way, we deliver food in this manner, at this speed, and orders are taken this way, that's why, one, you can go to any McDonald's in the world and get a fairly consistent experience, and the food is going to be consistent. So from just the top down, the experience is consistent, and the real thing that you want out of your process is you want to try to create a predictable outcome. And I think that's the key part, is a process should be creating a predictable outcome.
Right.
It shouldn't just be there to give people more stuff to do. People don't need more stuff to do. I don't care how big your organization is, and if you've hired, 15 people and you only need 10 in the department, there's always stuff to do. It's business. If you don't feel like you have enough stuff to do, then your thinking's wrong, not the business. So in the case of leadership, or just your own personal leadership, you're creating this process because you want a positive, typically a positive desired outcome. We created a process by which our clients, unless there's some other reason, we have them on an auto draft at the beginning of the month, because the pricing wasn't the problem for our clients. They saw the value in what we offered and felt like they were getting more than what they paid, and we hope to continue that relationship. But for us, in order to conduct business wisely, I mean, anybody who's ever done any sort of invoicing knows what a pain in the butt it is to go and chase down an invoice. And so we set it up to where we don't do that. It's auto drafted. I put in a process where I went to each client that we had existing and everyone that's come in since, and let them know this is how we invoice for our work and our services. And we set it up this way, and here's the document that tells you how, where to put in your information and what to click, because ours is an online system. And no one has pushed back on it. It's been fine for them. They know when it's coming out. We know when it's coming in. Cash flow is king, and so we positively affected our cash flow. With our sales process, what I'm hoping to do is, both for you and I and anybody else who comes in, is that the sales process sits almost as an extra employee or team member, and is able to conduct certain repeatable tasks over and over in roughly the same way. We get a consistent experience. So that way we're not sitting here thinking, okay, well, I had this call with this person. Now what should I do? Well, it's not a question of that. We have what a lot of people and people in the HubSpot community call a connect call. We call it a flyby because we have a phoenix for our symbol, so we made things bird oriented. But a flyby, and then after that, if it's a good fit, and that's a kind of a 30-minute call, then we said, okay, well, we're going to do a flight path, what some people call a either discovery or an exploratory. There's different names depending on who you are and where you're from. But typically an exploratory call that is longer, that dives more into the details. So you can figure out what solution that we have is actually going to help them meet their needs and their goals and things like that. So do that, and if everything seems aligned there on the solution, well, then we take everything that we just had there and we put it into a proposal, and we generate a proposal. We use a great software of whom we're partners with called Proposify. I highly recommend it. There will be a link in the show notes to go check it out. Full disclosure, we make a minor commission off of the referrals, but that doesn't add anything onto what you pay. It just is a nice way for us to make a little bit of something for referring a great software product. But we take everything there and we put it into our proposal template, and then we send it out, and then it's just a matter, and then we discuss it with them. We go over, say, this is everything we discussed. We've just put it on paper, and then we show them exactly where to electronically sign. It's 3 steps. Flyby, flight path, and then discuss the proposal. And if we know that that's the track everybody needs to run on, with, like I said, there are some minor differences where we may need to demo a piece of software if that's
just being a little bit flexible.
Yeah, it allows for some flexibility, but we know overall, there may be 2 emails in between flyby and flight path for one client, and only 1 is needed for another one, and another one needs 4 because their schedule got super busy or something like that. We're dealing with people, and they're always wild cards. So we have a nice high level funnel and our deal stages and process that allows us to see where is everybody, what is their next step, and that helps guide our communications on how do we need to be talking to these people as opposed to these people as opposed to these people. And honestly, it seems like a lot of it, and it's more upfront work than just letting it come to you. But honestly, I have felt a tremendous amount of just emotional freedom since sitting down and actually doing the work. Several hours just to evaluate. There were some frameworks and some questions I answered, but to set that up, and now I feel like, okay, well, now I know exactly what to do when I go and we get a new lead. I don't feel quite like they're having this totally customized experience, man. But it's not robotic. It's still human. It just helps us and it helps them, because then I can tell them, here's what to expect. Yeah. We have 3 steps. We, at a minimum, we can get in, out, and start work within 3 meetings.
Yeah. So it's an investment of the time up front, and it saves you time in the future and gives potential clients that safety, because you're like, this is what we do. Okay, I get it. So that's an example of a process that's helping. I mean, it's helping our business right now. What would you say is an example of a process that could hurt?
A hurting process? I'd almost say, most processes in and of themselves are not hurtful. To me, when they become hurtful is when there's an overabundance of them.
Right.
So when it becomes, if a process is ever put in place because whoever had the authority to put it in place lacks trust in his or her team, or with their client, then it's hurtful. If the process is because of a lack of trust, the process will not fix that. It further drives the problem into the organization. And all it says is, you're not trustworthy, we don't trust you to do the right thing, and in some cases you can feel like it's, well, I'm just a number, I'm just a cog. But I think the biggest detriment is the lack of trust that an over-processed environment can create. Is, don't I get a say in how? I mean, studies have shown, I think, Daniel Pink, in his studies on successful organizations, I forget which book that he wrote this out in, but one of the top factors in employee, team member satisfaction, longevity, things, things that reduce the overall cost of an employee to your organization. One of those was autonomy.
Right.
They need to have a say on the how. And if you can but in order to do that, you have to be able to give some trust.
Right.
So I say it's less about a specific what the process is necessarily, as so much as what it represents. Where is it coming from?
Right.
Is it because a mistake was made? Did you jump right on it? Because sometimes you don't need a process, you need a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because that conversation may need to be with that one person. Maybe it was, Earl in account services made a bonehead decision, and instead of requiring that the entire department now adheres to these strict things where they can only communicate these things if they pass it along to their supervisor, receive prior authorization for this, and have these many eyes on it, and then they can go forth and speak. Well, that's just stupid, to be quite honest with you. And who would want to work there? Earl will probably quit
right.
if he can. However, if Earl did make that bonehead decision and you go and talk to him and say, hey, that's not how we do things here, or you don't have the authority to grant, that service or that task or that project or to greenlight that, then that's a conversation. And that conversation will help protect Earl from making it in the future. It's an opportunity to teach, to invest. You may, in fact, earn a lot more trust from Earl, not just Earl, but his team members in his department, because they saw he made a mistake, he had a conversation. Now suddenly we don't have all these hoops to jump through, because people don't like friction. They don't like friction in their buying process. They don't like friction in just their internal work process. Nobody likes that. Yet a culture of mistrust will breed a lot of processes. So I just think that it's about the spirit and the culture and the atmosphere on what drives processes, because, like we said, they can be helpful, but they can be harmful.
Yeah, and it seems like lack of clarity can be one of those things that causes a process to be detrimental as well, because I'll throw out an example. We use EverHour, and I'm terrible at using it. I'm terrible at tracking my time because I just come in, get stuff done, leave, and completely forget about it. So we're trying to implement that more, not because there's a lack of trust of if I'm doing my job or not.
Right.
It's because we're trying to figure out where we can extend more hours, and are we using our time correctly and all that kind of stuff. So it could be, that's a process that we're implementing. So if that wasn't communicated clearly, it could be like, well, I don't trust you. I leave before you do, or you do remote hours and I don't think you're actually doing anything. Right. But it's actually, hey, let's see where we're spending our time, what we can do better. And it's just putting clarity around that process that's causing it to be more helpful than it is hurtful. Absolutely,
yeah, because that's a process, and that's a great example, Hannah, that's one that does get implemented at a lot of jobs on time tracking, especially in marketing creative services, where frequently the billing is by the hour. But even if it's not, if it's flat rate or whatever, there are a lot of bosses, supervisors, people who are supposed to be leaders are showing distrust by saying, just track your hours. Well, the first thing you think is, well, why don't you just trust me to get my work done? What is it that you're looking for, and what do you think I'm doing? Instead of, hey, we could be more profitable as an agency, as a business, which may lead to better benefits, bigger holiday bonuses, trips, special things, if we're more profitable. But that only comes because we optimize our time, which you're right. The clarity of communication around it. So the process isn't inherently good or bad, helpful or harmful. It's about what's behind it.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the practical side of it. How do you suggest going about starting to implement some processes? Where do you even maybe you don't even know what needs a process. How do you just start brainstorming this kind of thing?
Right. Well, that is a great question, because that one can create a stumbling block. So you may be listening to this and thinking, okay, phenomenal, I get it. There's good and there's bad, but what needs a process and what just needs something smaller, a conversation or something equivalent. I would take a look. One thing you can do, depending on who you are and where you work, this will change, but audit your time for a solid week, a work week, 5 days, maybe 6. And then take a look at it. It's not so much you're looking at how many hours you spent anywhere. It's less about that and more about what tasks are you doing. Now, if you work in a place that already has, say, a task manager, a project management tool, then you can use that to help supplement your information or course correct or whatever. But I would say if you can look at what tasks seem to show up the most, like create the top 3 most frequent tasks. So is it filing a certain report? That seems to come up frequently. Is it making sales calls? Is it making sales, or is it doing something internally? Whatever it is, figure out what those things are, and then start to break it down and say, well, if this is repeatable, and this is if you don't already have a process given to you. Now, if you already have a process given to you, but you feel like it's clunky, it may be in poor taste, or maybe a lack of trust, then I would say a suggestion for an improved and optimized process, taking that to your supervisor, I think would be a great idea. It shows initiative. You may, in fact, if there's people who do the same tasks that you do, they may be thinking, wanting, desiring the same thing, but it'll help you gain influence, leadership, and just brownie points in their eyes if you go and suggest this thing. Say, hey, supervisor person, I've been looking at what I do on a regular basis, and we have this one process that says we do A, B, and C, and then 1, 2, and 3. Well, I think we could cut out A and 2 and 3 and just make it this process, which is more simple, it's easy to follow. And I think more people would catch on. Well, you're helping them do better at their job, which is called leading up. And unless they're a radically insecure leader, and if you are, you kind of have to judge that for yourself, I don't think that they're going to dismiss that. I think they're going to welcome that. I think they want you as a person on a team to help improve the team. That should be why you're there, is to move the company forward, but also move your team, that your department forward. So I would say if you can audit your time, regardless of being an owner, a team member, a team leader, or just a freelancer, or just startup entrepreneur, you don't have your team members yet, but you want them, is to start auditing your time and find a few places where you can implement processes.
Right.
Now, one of the things you can do, especially if you're short of people, because a lot of times processes could be delegated out. It's like, I want to create this one process and I want this person to do it. And that's great and that's fine. But for a lot of people, software is the solution. Like in marketing, we work with a lot of marketing automation software.
Right.
Which takes people through automated workflows that if, Joe Blow visits, 4 blog posts and subscribes and downloads an ebook, well, suddenly he gets moved from this stage of the funnel to this stage of the funnel, which means he needs this kind of communication. We need to get him into the sales part of the funnel. He's, moving from marketing qualified lead and trying to get down into a sales qualified lead. And those sort of things, software can supplement a whole lot. And there's a lot that is inexpensive that can really help extend what you do and just take those processes. Like, I feel like I say it differently every time, but Zapier, Zapier, but is a great automation tool for bringing pieces of your software together. We live in a day and age where software runs most businesses.
Yeah.
If you could have them talking to each other instead of you trying to take and transcribe and do this, if you find yourself doing that, might be looking for an integration to help make that more simple. But there are certain things like a sales process. Now, we use the HubSpot CRM, which, by the way, is free. So check that out. It's incredible for free. We may also be biased, but it's still amazing. But they had the deal stages in there. Now, it didn't create it for me. All it did was visually represent what I wanted down on paper, what was in my head, and helped us keep it orderly. The nice part is, as you start, if you do these things now, if you get them out of your head, which is what I'm discovering, that's the pain point for me, is a lot of this stuff has been stuck inside my head, and you didn't know.
Yeah.
There's no way for you to know unless I verbally communicate it, which is a great first step, but then that requires you to either be like a phenomenal note taker who can archive everything I've ever said and then do a search for these keywords. I mean, that's unreasonable.
We all know I'm not.
Yeah, so that's not happening. But you're also going to be, working across the pond next year, and we need a way for us to stay on the same page with some of these things. And yeah, we'll supplement with some phone calls or whatever, but we'll... And by the way, when I say across the pond, we don't literally have a pond and she's just going to go to the other side. We're talking about the Atlantic. She's going to work in the UK. But we are talking about ongoing efficiency. We want to have interns and eventually hire more people. Processes can be those key things in a business that need to get out of the owner or the leader's head and down on paper, even if that's real paper, digital paper, or in some sort of software like with a CRM. It needs to get out and somewhere that multiple people can access it, even for yourself. So like now, me, I can click in and I'm like moving people around in the deal stages and I'm having lots of fun. But I'm looking forward to the other parts of our business that we can add a process so that we have a consistent experience, clients have a consistent experience, which helps us with our branding and marketing. And as we move through, we can always iterate.
Right.
That's the thing. It's not chiseled in stone.
Right.
This isn't the 10 Commandments, okay? No disrespect to them and Moses and Mount Sinai. But I'll just keep going. And Jesus Christ. But, you're not chiseling it in stone. It may be process 1.0. We may get 6, and I think you should reevaluate your processes often.
Right.
By often, I mean quarterly to 6 months, depending on what it is. Because what happens is you'll get this process debt where suddenly you have 30 different processes when really you only need 12.
Yeah.
But what happens is you get these hangers-on that they were great in their season, but their season has passed. They either needed to change or they needed to die.
Right.
So moving forward, so audit your time, identify your top 3 processes, identify the very repeatable parts of your task. Find your top 3 tasks or outcomes that you want, and look at the most repeatable parts of that. And create just a little set of criteria about what that should look like and how that should flow. Does that mean you need to create some templates in your software or in a Word document or a Google Doc or PDF or something like that? Yeah, it may mean some more upfront work, but what we're talking about is lifetime efficiency. So it's like painting. You do more work prepping to paint than actually painting in your house, which... God bless people who are in the painting profession, because it is like nails on a chalkboard for me. So find those top 3 things and then circle the most impactful thing you do and start there.
Right.
Create that process, and it shouldn't be 17 steps. Our sales process, which is the way in which we generate revenue, which pays our paychecks and powers these microphones, that keeps the lights on and everything, and allows us to stream from Facebook Live, which we do for every podcast, so check us out. Whoop. But that's like one of the most important parts of a business, is generating sales.
Right.
We literally, like, if you count the start and the end, whichever the decision is, we have 5 steps. 5 steps, that's it. You know, and I've heard, you know, for some article I was reading regarding this, it's 5 to 7 is optimal. But no more than. Because otherwise it becomes far too complicated.
Right.
So that would be my advice to you, the listener, the people, to go out, find your top 3, circle your top 1, your most impactful, and create 3 to 5, no more than 7 steps that you can repeat every time, and maybe put just a couple of bullet points on what is needed on each one, so that it's standardized. And I think you'll find that the time gains you'll get will be fantastic for you and your company. The consistency of your work will improve, and you'll find that you'll start to build momentum. Like, it's maybe it's a little intoxicating, but it certainly is encouraging and motivating to go create more in some other high impact areas that just allow you to remain impactful more often and over a longer period of time. And at the end of the day, I mean, isn't that what we're all trying to do in business, is make an impact? And that may be through what we sell is making an impact, and maybe the money we make is making an impact for our families and our legacy and whatever it is. Whatever your why is for your work, if you add a few processes, I'm guaranteeing that you will make a greater impact than you thought possible.
Yeah. So healthy processes lead to healthy growth.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap. So 2 thumbs up for processes.
Indeed. And for long pauses.
It adds.
What are you, Yoda?
Probably. I don't know. All right. So speaking of processes, let's get into our process of closing out the podcast and going into our shout outs.
What? So, shout out, as always, to David the engineer, always making us sound awesome and funky fresh. I've been really encouraged by the clarity of our voices as I listen driving down the streets in my truck. It was so clear. I'm pretty sure he twisted it to not make me sound annoying, because sometimes I hear my voice and I'm like, oh my God, that's what people have to hear. And I actually was like, I turned it on and our podcast turned on. I didn't even know.
You didn't cringe.
I didn't cringe. I didn't even know it was our podcast until I looked down and I was like, man, that's some deep stuff. I was like, this guy, he sounds familiar. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's ours. So, yeah, clearly that was towards the end of the day and my brain was a bit fried, but that's okay. Also, shout out to Quietdrive and Illenium. Love their music, and it just starts and ends the podcast with the right measure of energy.
Right.
So we're grateful for them. You can find links to download, purchase, follow, subscribe to their music and their musical career. So you can go and check that out in the show notes.
In the descriptions.
Yeah, and shout out to Hannah for doing the show notes.
Yeah, that's me, guys.
So,
that's me.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
And as usual, if you're listening to us in the iTunes store, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then why don't you go ahead and leave us a 5-star review?
Only 5-star reviews.
Only 5-star reviews. Not 4.5.
No.
Definitely not 1.5.
No.
But 5.
Yeah, anything on the half is of the devil.
Right. Just be committed.
Yeah.
Go that extra step.
Be all in. On 5 stars.
Right. Of course. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us again from the Phoenix 21 Creative Agency. This was Hannah Bauer and Kenny Lang, and you were listening to the Business Rising Podcast. So until next time, keep rising.
and cut. Did you just dab on the podcast?
I wasn't going for that, but it kind of looks like it. I wasn't going for it.
What's up, Facebook Live? As you can see, neither one of us can speak clearly, and we just wrapped up what I felt like was a really good podcast on processes. So I'm going to focus on Hannah. I'm going to see what questions we have. Matt Draffin has joined. We have 2 viewers. Woo! Chris Bauer has joined. I paid him to join. So, and you're the only reason why he's watching, because who cares what I have to say. I don't see any comments. I guess that's because people are...
Come on, guys. Get engaged.
...are perfectly wise and capable. But anyways...
until next time.
We're excited that you watched. Okay. We're honored that you watched. I'm going to cut her off because I wanted to do it because she got to do the podcast one. But anyways, until next time, keep rising.